Hey folks, happy Sunday. JJ here, coming to you from the downtown workshop at Jewett Guitars in Cleveland, Ohio. And a lot of you, since I did a short video on veneers for StewMac, you asked me how I made my purfling and my binding. So I'm going to kind of give you a quick overview on the way that I do it. First of all, you make up a log. Let me switch this camera around so I can show you. Okay, so this is a log. This is Wenge, and I've got the quarter sawn face on here, which is better for Wenge binding if you're going to use it. And to this approximately 1/4 inch thick piece of Wenge, I glued a piece of curly maple veneer. This will be my line on the binding. And you can make all sorts of logs up. Let me go over here and show you what I've got. This is a log made out of Wenge, and that has a curly maple and a black, a very thin black on it. This is a cocobolo with a curly maple and black. I've got all sorts of them here. I'll just show you one more. Here's a curly koa with black and curly maple on it. And I glue all these up in my vacuum bag. My vacuum bag just makes really quick and easy work of doing this. And the glue that I use for this is a non-foaming polyurethane, and this is the stuff that I use. You can get it in 2 different kind of types. The one that I like to use is made by Gorilla, and make sure that you get the one that says clear Gorilla Glue. This is minimal foaming, and it's also clear. This one is one that I got from Lee Valley, and this was recommended to me by a couple of my Canadian colleagues. This one works too. I don't like this one as much because it doesn't seem to have as long an open time as the Gorilla Glue. But for this purpose, you can use either one. The reason I use polyurethane is because it will resist the heat and the moisture from the bending process when you bend this stuff. Now, this is the key to cutting binding. If you use a normal table saw blade to cut your binding, you can do it, but you'll waste a lot because that thing's about 1/8 of an inch thick. What I use is this guy. This I just got at the hardware store up the street. This is an ultra thin kerf, and it's made typically for those hand saws. And as you can see, the kerf on this is about half, if not even less than half, the thickness of the normal saw blade. So as long as you get the right arbor, or the same arbor hole as what you use in your table saw, you're good to go. You can alternatively use a thin kerf table saw blade, but once again, it's not, you'll lose a lot in the process. So before I start ripping my binding, I'll make sure that this side right here is sanded, or in my case, I join it flat, so that when it rides against the fence, it'll be nice and flat. Okay, so let me stop here and then I'll pick it up after I rip a few sheets. Okay, so we're ready to start ripping. Once again, make sure that this side is completely flat and joined. And the other thing that I do, which is a trick that my good friend Michael Bashkin showed me, mark one end of this log. That way, you'll know when all the binding strips have the same end. That's important when you do your binding because you want, like, for example, if you have 2 binding strips that come at the butt, you want these 2 to have the same chalk mark on them. Okay, so I measured a piece of binding, and it's at 80 thou. I usually use binding that's a little bit less. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set my fence up. And let me pause here so I can use two hands. Okay, so I set my fence up. Oh, I made a mistake. Let me retreat. Okay, the other important part of this equation is to use a sacrificial fence with your normal fence. When I'm working this close to the blade, I want to use something that's not going to run into the fence or the normal fence. And this also gives me the ability to size this really correctly. Now, I'm just a little bit over, I would say, this 80 thou, which is fine. Just from experience, this gives me a pretty smooth cut, this type of blade, which is a ripping blade. As opposed to using a cross-cut blade, which would leave a rougher surface. So I've sized it just a little bit above the top of the wenge, and we'll rip one strip, measure it, and then see where we are. So I ripped one strip and it came in way under 80. So I need to increase the distance between the blade and the fence. Okay, so there's my second cut. 92 is a little bit oversized, but that's okay. It leaves me plenty of room for sanding this to final dimension on my thickness sander. The binding that I like to use when I'm actually binding the guitar comes in between about 0.078 to 0.080, or 80 thou to 78 thou. So let me continue to run the rest of this, and we'll have a bunch of binding strips ready to do final sizing on the sander. Okay, so I've ripped 5 strips. This was the first one that I ripped, which came in a little bit undersized. You'll notice the chalk mark is all on this end. This gives me one extra strip just in case one of these cracks or does something. I know from past experience, wenge is not that hard to bend, so I'm pretty confident that all I'll use is 4. You can go ahead and rip the whole log if you want. If you do that, you may want to check this edge to make sure it's against the fence flat. If it's not, go back to the joiner or get it flat so that your strips are equal thickness when you use them. That's pretty much it. I would say that all I have to do now is run these through the thickness sander to get them down to my thickness, and then maybe I'll stack them up like this and run them through up in case I want to decrease the thickness of these. They should be a little bit over 1/4 inch at this point, which is fine, but I can always trim them down a bit. So that's it. Not rocket science, but the key, as I mentioned, is to get one of these blades for your table saw that are an ultra thin curve, and then use a sacrificial fence. See you later, Gator.